G'day everyone, and welcome to the third and final video for week 4 of our admin law course. In this last video, we're going to talk about the concepts of broad and narrow ultra vires. Now look, some lawyers love using Latin. Personally, I hate it. People mostly only do it to show off how clever they are, and there really aren't any concepts, at least not that I can think of, which can be expressed in Latin but not in English. But you do hear the term ultra vires from time to time, so it probably makes some sense to understand it. Ultra in Latin simply means outside or beyond. So an ultrasound is conducted from outside the body. Ultraviolet light is outside the violet end of the visible spectrum. In English, we sometimes use the word ultra to mean extreme. So for instance, if we describe something as ultra modern, in Latin, however, it just means beyond. Vires means strong or powerful. We see shadows of this word from time to time in English too. Someone who is strong is described as virile. Someone whose ethics are strong has virtue. So bringing them together, ultra vires means beyond power. A person or organisation acts ultra vires if they are doing something which is beyond their power. You would have come across this concept in constitutional law. When the Commonwealth tries to make legislation which is beyond its power under the Constitution, the legislation is described as being ultra vires, and it's invalid. In administrative law, we split ultra vires into two subcategories: narrow ultra vires and broad ultra vires. Narrow ultra vires asks, quite literally, does the decision maker have the power? So narrow ultra vires is not concerned with how well the decision maker follows the process, and it's certainly not concerned with whether they make a good decision or not. A decision maker might follow all the processes and make a crackingly good decision, but if they're not the right decision maker, if they don't have the power, then their decision is invalid. Ever been to a game of Australian football? I'm sure it's the same in all codes, but AFL is one of the games I love. Every time there's a decision on the field, there's 10,000 experts in the stand, half of whom agree with the umpire and half of whom think the umpire is blind, stupid, biased and generally an idiot. All of those 10,000 have done basically the same thing as the umpire. They've seen the same bit of play, applied the same rules. Half of them have even come up with the same decision. But only one person in that situation has the power to make the decision, and that's the person with the whistle. So narrow ultra vires asks if the decision maker can make the decision, if they have the power. Now, if you think back to the range of different grounds for review that I went through in the second video, a few of them are clearly narrow ultra vires. So if the decision maker lacks jurisdiction, that's narrow ultra vires. If the decision is not authorised by the enactment, well, that's also narrow ultra vires, because if the enactment doesn't authorise the decision, well, the decision maker can't make the decision. Broad ultra vires is basically everything else. The idea is that you may be the right decision maker, and the decision might be authorised by the Act, but if you don't follow all the procedural rules, then your power to make a proper decision falls away. Let's take an example. Let's say there was a decision made with an improper purpose. So let's say that somewhere in the tax department, there's a tax officer who just loves the environment. On the weekends, they're out hiking or they join in on land care activities. They wear Birkenstocks and sing folk music. A full-on greenie who happens to work in the tax office during the week. And now let's say they have to make a decision about whether a particular tax applies to a coal mining company. Now, as a good tax officer, they know that the tax doesn't actually apply, but they think, damn it, here's my chance to strike a blow for renewable energy by increasing the tax on this coal company. Can you see that they've made the decision for an improper purpose? It might be a great move for the planet and for global warming, but they only had power to make decisions for proper taxation purposes. The moment they began using their decision-making ability for another purpose, they went beyond their authority. It was ultra vires. So pretty much all the rest of the grounds for review fall into this category. So narrow ultra vires asks if the person has the actual authority to make the decision, and broad ultra vires says they lose the power to make a valid decision unless they follow all the required processes. Now you might remember that in an earlier video I said that the distinction between broad and narrow ultra vires is not particularly important. I stand by that. If you look at Section 5 of the ADJR Act, absolutely nothing turns on the question of whether the grounds for review are broad or narrow ultra vires. The legislation treats them in exactly the same way. The review processes are the same. The remedies are the same. Everything's the same. If there's no actual difference in the way that anything is done as a result of the review being broad or narrow ultra vires, then it's a bit of a pointless distinction, really, isn't it? Now, we have to teach you the distinction. It's on the list. It's on the list of things we're required to teach. But let me give you the hot tip. I'm not going to examine any of this. Watch this video, understand the concept, stick it in your little collection of things you know about admin law, but then that's that. Suddenly, though, we're at the end of week 4. Now, you might notice this week has been really light on in terms of the amount of substance and the amount of reading. That's quite deliberate. You see, we're a third of the way through the course now. We've covered a lot of the basic concepts, and we're about to start going through the grounds for review, one by one, in substantial detail. There will be reading. Not all of it will be fascinating, but it will be much easier to handle if you have your head wrapped around the basic concepts. So this week, use the lack of case reading to create some space. Go back, particularly to week 2. Ensure you understand what we mean by a decision of an administrative character made under an enactment. Watch the video on jurisdiction again. Make sure you understand the distinction between legal review and merits review. Then you will be good to go with the material next week. Onward and upwards.